In our last video, we discussed how one of Illinois' top-rated school districts, District 220, was promoting highly explicit material in school libraries and ignoring countless complaints by parents reporting boys performing lewd acts in girls' bathrooms and the dissemination of youth porn throughout the schools as a result of school board-induced hypersexualization. You'll find that video in the description below, and I highly recommend that when you're done watching this video, you also go back and watch that video to gain greater context on what we're about to discuss, which is Illinois District 211. And I'm sorry to say, but District 211 is arguably worse. Not only do their school libraries contain all of our favorite literary classics, such as Genderqueer, This Book is Gay, and who could forget the exquisite, prolific classic, Flamer.
So first in Flamer, there is a part of this book where a bunch of boys masturbate into a bottle, and they say that whichever boy does not ejaculate has to drink the bottle. Now, can any of you look at this crowd and objectively say that that is not obscene?
Now here's why Palatine's District 211 is arguably more dangerous. 5 of the 7 elected school board members have chosen to opt in for a comprehensive sex ed curriculum following Governor Pritzker's passage of Senate Bill 818, which forces school boards to either opt in or opt out of a comprehensive sex ed curriculum. And as you're about to see, this is no Norman Rockwell era anatomy class.
The recommended wellness critical learning standards for comprehensive sexual health education we are being asked to vote on tonight include everything we already have and teach on, including, I'll say them again, consent and healthy relationships, anatomy and physiology, puberty and adolescent development, sexual health, and interpersonal relationships. We're being asked to add 2 topics: gender identity and expression, and sexual orientation and identity. Do these topics sound familiar? They should, as these are already topics included in policies within our district. Tonight, we're not voting on whether or not to teach our children how to perform certain sex acts, use sex toys, or get an abortion pill without a prescription. The fact is that students can learn these from their friends, parents, or on the internet using one's computer, tablet, or smartphone. Other than perhaps parents telling their kids about these things, should they learn them from their friends and on the internet, or from within an educational setting with factual information in a safe school environment? Please. In a safe school environment.
Gender identity and expression? Did you catch that? Vice President Stephen Rosenblum is asserting that children are already discussing whether or not boys are really boys and girls are really girls. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm quite certain that my brothers and I and none of our childhood friends were discussing whether or not boys are actually boys and girls are actually girls. Now listen to what Monica Klein, a Title X comprehensive sex educator of 10 years, had to say about grooming and comprehensive sexual education.
And so what I tell parents today is, listen, it's not just showing them a condom, it's them actually doing the motions and using it. Yeah. And then from there, it's doing the role playing. So now they're acting it out. Now they're also speaking it. So this is all just really the grooming process of teaching them how to do this to make sure that when they're in that situation, that's what they've practiced. Well, that's what they're going to do.
Now, in spite of school board ideologues' best attempts to cloak their licentious curriculums in wellness language, the truth about their vile efforts has already begun to leak out.
Ms. Cavell, is it true that you hosted a podcast titled All About Anal? You are targeting vulnerable, minor-aged teenagers with your message. I've asked you to step down, as have had other parents, yet you continue to prioritize your personal agenda over parental concerns.
Like, porn is for the viewer. So the angles and the positions that we see in porn are to maximize a viewer pleasure. So that's why I say, porn is porn, and porn may have its place. I'm sorry, were we just listening to a school board mom who's been entrusted with
the molding of young and impressionable minds, or a die-hard sexual revolutionary?
Zusammenleben der Völker ergeben, nicht mit Stillschweigen übergeht, sondern sie...
Now, in order to understand what's really going on, we'll need to look at the National Sex Education Standards, which begin at grades K through 2. The National Sex Education Standards require K through 2 students to list accurate names for body parts, which sounds reasonable at first. But take a look at the next page. However, by grades 3 through 5, students are taught that gender exists along a spectrum. K through 2 students are taught that all living things have the ability to reproduce. However, by grades 6 through 8, students are taught that short and long-term contraception is safe and viable, making promiscuity possible, including abortifacients. Are you starting to see how this works? First, the NSCS acknowledges the traditional view on gender and reproduction. Then they replace these norms with their morally bankrupt, nonsensical norms, and they wrap it all up in a bow called comprehensive sexual education. It might surprise many to find out that the Cleveland and Mayo clinics sponsor the National Sex Education Standards and both offer gender reassignment surgery. It might also surprise many to find out why both SECUS and Planned Parenthood have decided to sponsor comprehensive sexual education. Now, you might be wondering what our old friends at Planned Parenthood have to do with all of this. The following slide is taken directly from District 211's comprehensive sexual education curriculum. When promiscuity leads to unwanted pregnancies, Planned Parenthood is prepared to cash in by offering their abortifacient drugs. Now, it might seem to many outraged parents that comprehensive sexual education is something new, but I'm going to show you that comprehensive sexual education isn't new at all. And in fact, one parent at one of the District 211 meetings was able to determine this and did an excellent job of trying to explain this to all of the parents present.
Do you know where comprehensive sex ed comes from? Because its history is an ugly one. It goes back to Dr. Alfred Kinsey. Kinsey is often portrayed as a self-sacrificing saint. Kinsey was a monster. Kinsey solicited the sexual abuse of children, toddlers, and babies as young as 2 months old. His most famous book includes data about children being stimulated to orgasm. Kinsey wanted to prove that children are, quote, naturally sexual from birth, end quote. And it's worth noting that Kinsey's definition of a pediatric orgasm included crying, screaming, and convulsions. Kinsey also set out to prove that the people living in his day and age, which was the 1940s, weren't living according to the sexual morals of the time. He did so by interviewing convicted sex offenders, prostitutes, and homosexuals. And he claimed that this data represented the entire population. Kinsey was a fraud, and the world ate it up. Kinsey claimed that between 26 and 50% of married men and women cheat, and that up to 50% of farm boys have sex with animals. Kinsey was trying to normalize perversity. According to PBS, he hired a videographer to film he and his staff having sex. In other words, he made porn with his employees. Finally, Kinsey claimed that pedophilia was not necessarily harmful to children. The real problem, according to Kinsey, is all the fuss made about pedophilia by parents and policemen. That's what upsets a child. So what does all that have to do with us now? Well, one of Kinsey's disciples, Mary Calderon, founded SECUS. His co-author, Wardell Pomeroy, an open advocate of pedophilia, was one of the founding board members of SECUS. SECUS pioneered comprehensive sex ed. And SIECUS is, of course, one of the chief architects of the NSES, which you just approved. Their worldview has not changed. Their goals have not changed. The tagline for SIECUS is Sex Ed for Social Change. And where all this is going is evident to all but the most blind.
You see, the truth is, friends, that comprehensive sex ed militants like Comrade Stephen Rosenblum and Staff Sergeant Kim Cavell probably believe that they're doing your children a service by sexualizing them early on.
By the end of 10th grade, students should be able to differentiate between sex assigned at birth, gender identity, and gender expression, differentiate between sexual orientation, sexual behavior, and sexual identity. These standards recognize the existence of queer people, and that's why we're witnessing a giant hissy fit.
But keep in mind, they also believe that they are the gatekeepers of good and evil. These are the self-appointed gods of their self-constructed universe that your children just happen to be living in. But because we now possess an objective truth, which is self-evident, granted to us by the same God who crafted these children, whom it is our duty to protect, it is now our duty to put the gatekeepers where they belong.